Great, good evening. My name is Nairi Woods. I'm the founding dean of the Blavatnik School of Government at Oxford University. And it's a great pleasure to be moderating this session at the World Economic Forum this year. Let me just point a small logistical detail out. I have here an iPad on which your questions will appear. I'm not exactly sure how you get your question onto my iPad, but apparently there will be instructions put on a slide. But I would welcome your questions right from the beginning of this session. I'd love it to be a conversation.
So let's do that right.
I'm going to introduce you to our panelists in a moment. But before we move to that, I'd just like to introduce tonight's topic by saying that last year at Davos, we all were invited to master the Fourth Industrial Revolution, greatly helped by Klaus Schwab's excellent book on the subject. This year, a different challenge has sharpened. People across Europe and across the United States have in a way risen up and said, we don't feel we belong and we don't feel we're being heard by leaders in the public sector and sometimes leaders in the private sector. Klaus Schwab proposed to us on the eve of this year's World Economic Forum that fact means that we all have to now focus on responsive and responsible leadership. And he put to us the idea that a good leader has radar and a compass. So think about what President Xi Jinping told us this morning. If we want to cross the ocean, we can't retreat back into the harbor every time there's a storm. So the leaders in this room certainly need radar to know what citizens are thinking and wanting and concerned about. You certainly need a compass, as Professor Schwab tells us, the values that are going to take you forward. But I think we need to add one thing. You need a crew. You need to bring people along with you. Governments across the world need a narrative that helps people to feel that they do belong, that they are being heard. That's one way that they can start to rebuild trust. So what we're going to do on tonight's panel is we're going to have these panelists share their wisdom on where we are at the beginning of 2017 and what are the ways that we can begin to rebuild trust and to manage the fourth industrial revolution in a way that helps societies come together more cohesively, more prosperously. And I'd like to start by turning to Dr. Vishal Sikka, the CEO of Infosys. Vishal, you're the son of a railways engineer. You saw technology at that phase, and you're also a surfer, so you know all about dodging the waves. What's the disruption that we most need to pay attention to that's coming from the new technologies? And why? Why should we pay so much attention to the disruption?
I think if you look at the way the people are affected, as you described, and all the geopolitical changes that are happening, they're all happening within the wider context of the technological disruption that is impacting all of us. In particular, the development and the advance of AI technology. I think that artificial intelligence, and certainly the advance that we have seen just in the last 1 year, and certainly in the last few years, when I look back on this time compared to when I was a PhD student studying AI, it is staggering. And yet, in many ways, we are in the beginnings of this technology and the revolution. And in many ways, we face the prospect of leaving a larger swath of humanity behind us in the light of this technology than any technology that we have ever created. So we need to be extra careful, extra conscious, put in an extra effort to ensure that we don't create a bigger divide, that we don't create an even bigger society of have-nots, that the technology that we build now is in service of everyone. And that means education, a deep commitment to education. That means a deep commitment to helping people bridge this displacement gap when technologies disrupt jobs and so forth. That means creating a sense of we can create and reshape the future of these technologies for our future in a way that benefits everyone and doesn't leave large parts of humanity behind. That's what I see.
So in Britain, in the United States, in other countries in Europe, it feels as though people are staging a mutiny. The crew are not with established governments and established leaders. Is that happening in India? Is there a fear of mutiny or a risk of mutiny?
I think, and Mukesh Bhai can speak about this in much more richness. I think in India, there is a tremendous opportunity. There is India is a young country. India is a technologically advanced country. India is a very entrepreneurial country in ways that are not seen in the outside. And yet, when we look at the recent demonetization that was done in India, you can see both of these aspects at play. The opportunity that technology can create and the way that some of these disruptions can really affect the ordinary people. So the answer to your question is both yes and no, depending on how we look at India. But perhaps Mukesh Bhai can speak about this in more detail.
Well, let me move straight to Mukesh then. Mukesh Ambani, you've watched Reliance grow from being a $1 million company to being a $70 billion company. That's extraordinary growth. But in a country where there's a lot of poverty, and there's also a fantastic democratic tradition of rebellion, what's your view on the disruption in India?
Well, I think if we first start with what Vishal said in terms of how does humanity progress and how do we as a society progress, right? I think that at this time in India, we are blessed with having very strong leadership from our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi. He has painted a vision for India which creates foundations, because when you embrace technology, you should use technology for the good of all people. And I think that the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution really are all-inclusive and will benefit all. And they require a sense of foundation. And let me quickly just tell you what Vishal said. So even if we are a very young country, we have 200 million of our 1.2 billion in schools. And clearly, education needs to transform itself. The fastest way that we can transform education in a big country like India is use technology. It's the biggest equalizer. It can produce results in not decades, but in the next 3 to 5 years. And that can then create and benefit all. So for all of this, you really need a foundation. And you need for a country and a society to embrace rather than isolate itself. To, as Premier Z said in the morning, that if the world is interconnected by oceans, you don't need to divide it into rivers and lakes. And the same thing is true when you want to embrace technology. So from that point of view, yes. I also believe that all the components of technology, and particularly the fourth industrial revolution technologies, are all-inclusive. So in a sense, they are the biggest equalizer for a country like India, for all our 1.2 billion people. We in India have a foundation where we have got an identity system for over 1.1 billion people. This will then enable us, right, with the recent demonetization and the movement to digital cash. So far, India has been only what I call a high-value, low-volume credit transaction. So the common man, the ordinary man, the people whose voice everybody should hear, right, had no access to credit. I think that that can change very, very fast with embracement of technology. And there can be many such examples. So in summary, what is happening in India is that we are embracing technology for leadership. Our young people are embracing technology. Society is moving, and in the last 90 days, because of demonetization, we've had a major movement to what I call less cash or digital cash. And people have accepted that. There is support at the grassroots level, because in the end, they think it is for a better life for themselves. And as long as we are responsible to deliver that, and I believe that the fourth industrial revolution technologies can deliver that, it'll do well.
But can I ask you very personally, the world, many people across the world are saying that globalization has been managed, by folks like all of us, and has benefited the top 1% much, much more than anyone else. That's in sharp focus now. What do you feel personally as one of the 1%? So what's your personal responsibility? Is it to support your government to distribute better? Is it to, how do you see that moving forward? How do you see your own responsibility moving forward?
Well, I think that it is very important that opportunities are given equally to all, right? And what interconnected, like we have all 7 billion people in this world are, in a sense, should be connected, and they should have a shared destiny and shared prosperity. Doing that, right, once you have access to opportunity, you first have to create wealth before you can distribute wealth. So for a country like India, I am extremely committed. And as I have seen the wealth creation on a grassroots basis, right, it's important that to raise standards of living and quality of life for all our billion people, we give a fair share of opportunity to everybody, give education to everybody, embrace the free market for creation of wealth. And then once wealth is created, right, distribution is the easier problem to have. But you shouldn't shun creation of wealth. Creation of wealth is more important than distribution of wealth.
Right. I mean, I think in a lot of parts of the world, people are saying, yes, we've been hearing that for 30 years, but it looks as though the distribution is becoming more and more skewed to the top 1%. Mark Benioff, you're chair and CEO of Salesforce, and you tell me a committed ukulele player. But how do you see the responsibility of the 1% who have so benefited from globalization?
Yeah. Well, for me, when I started Salesforce, 17 years ago, I thought a lot about how do we integrate companies more deeply into society? How do we give back? How do we support many of the NGOs that are here? That's why when we started our company, we put 1% of our equity, our profit, and our time into a nonprofit, an NGO called Salesforce.org. It was easy at the time because we had no employees, we had no products or equity. But today, of course, we're a company with a market cap of 50-something billion dollars, and we have 25,000 employees, and so we've been able to give back hundreds of millions of dollars, but also millions of hours of volunteerism, and we run 30,000 nonprofits and NGOs, and many of them are here for free on our services. Equality and the equality crisis certainly is a child of globalization. The access to capital and the access to this technology that is really available to so few then really gives them this kind of incredible unfair advantage, and up they have gone. I think, coming back to Vishal's comment, I think that when we look at what's happening right now in technology, this is the moment, I think, when we have the highest level of anxiety, because we can see advancements in artificial intelligence that are beyond what we even expected. It's happening at a rate and capability that we're worrying that how will this impact the everyman and also the broad range of workers across the world. This year, my heart has been with so many migrants and refugees who, 65 million refugees across the world, and these touching stories, and thinking about how they're going to get back to stability in homes. I think now about how artificial intelligence will create digital refugees and how people will be displaced from jobs, tens of millions of people across the planet, because technology is moving forward so rapidly, creating much lower cost, much easier to use, and much more capable work environments. So companies, individuals, very people that we have here, we have to decide, are we going to be committed to supporting and improving this state of the world, or are we just going to kind of let this go as it is? And so we're really at a crucial point right now. I'm convinced of it.
Can I just follow up? So what's the solution to that? You've just painted a picture of hundreds of thousands, millions of people who will no longer have jobs. And what is it that you think leaders should be doing now to ensure that those people feel included and heard in the societies in which they live?
Well, I think that you know that throughout history, technology has displaced workers, but then workers have the opportunity to be trained or retrained or vocational training or education or supported. And today, there's more people working in the world than there ever has been in the history of the world, as evidence of that point. So we're at a very good place, actually. Now, obviously, there's 200 million youth, who are unemployed. That's a terrible statistic that we need to focus on. There is, pockets of dramatic unemployment throughout the world, even where I live in the United States. But we are at a point where it's possible that this technology could accelerate to the point where we'll see this kind of creation of these digital refugees. And I think that that is something that we really need to be mindful of and start having these very serious conversations, multi-stakeholder dialogues, honestly, where we can bring together corporate leaders, government leaders, social leaders, NGOs. Only through a multi-stakeholder dialogue are we going to get this answer. There is no, clear path forward. And as Vishal said so well, all this has just happened, in a matter of months. So we are really just on it's a fairly recent observation of what's happening today. So it's quite, and it's an amazing time. That's why we call it the fourth industrial revolution. This is incredible what is happening. All these things at once: cloud computing, mobile computing, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering. All these things are happening all at once, so well articulated in Professor Schwab's book.
So, and what's the thing that's happened just in the last few months to which you're referring?
Well, the advancements in artificial intelligence, the ability for the software to learn more rapidly than we expected.
Can I move to Mary Barra? Mary, you grew up child of a die maker, but put yourself through college, and you've been at GM 36 years. Your crew probably trusts you a lot. In fact, there's lots of evidence that they do. But you're in a car industry that's negotiating difficult waters. Some would say that the government in the United States is threatening to do what President Xi Jinping this morning said, to retreat back to its own harbor, or to require its companies to retreat back to their own harbor. What's your strategy in those difficult waters?
Well, clearly the industry, the auto industry is undergoing, rapid transformation, as almost every industry is, in not only, advancements in, I'll say, the traditional owner-driver model, but then, the opportunities with autonomous that, do provide a lot of societal benefit when you think about the fact that whether it's the population that doesn't have the skills to drive or the physical ability to drive. Autonomous really provides freedom of getting from point A to point B, which for all of us that can do that is a huge benefit. So, we look at the technology are coming, we see how it is going to improve for society, but, we have to look at how are those shifts going to be made, and how do we manage that business? And, clearly, articulating the vision. So our employees, it's for us, I think it starts with our employees and our customers of understanding and building the trust of here's where we're going, and here's how things will change. and how we have to adapt, but then also providing a roadmap. I've talked about the fact that you need to be incredibly transparent. In order to have trust, people have to, you really have to paint the picture and not only share the good news, but share the difficult news, and then the solutions how you're going to move forward. One of the other key areas, and a couple of the other panelists have mentioned, is education. And we're at General Motors investing a lot in not only educating our existing employees for the new technical skills that are going to be needed, but also reaching deep into all the communities in which we live and work, and the education systems there of how can we support to make sure there's more STEM education involved. And we just got involved with a strategic partnership was announced with Girls Who Code, because when you look at and deep diving into the middle school to make sure young girls are not making decisions at that point that are going to really make it more difficult for them to get involved in a technology field, because technology is a part of almost every industry. So there's an obligation that we feel to our employees in communicating and painting the picture of where they're going and providing the roadmaps that each individually eventually has to be accountable for, but then also reaching deeper into making sure that as we grow the workforce, as children enter the workforce and young adults, that they've got the skills that are going to be necessary. Because right now, not only do we have some that are unemployed, but we also have areas where there's jobs available and we don't have people with the skill set.
So if you fast forward 10 years in your industry, will it be mostly robots?
I still think the traditional owner-driver model of I get in, drive my own vehicle. Think that there's markets around the world that, they aspire to have that type of personal mobility. I think autonomous, if you put the customer in the center and look at how do I add value to people's lives, it's going to be the full range from the model we know today to dense urban areas that autonomous is going to make sense because it reduces congestion. Driving isn't that remarkable when you're in stop-and-go traffic with no place to park. And so if you look at solving real issues for the customer, I think there's going to be a wide variety of solutions for a very long time.
But I guess I'm asking, when President-elect Trump suggests to a different company that they should produce their cars in America, not Mexico, there's an assumption that the jobs will go to American workers instead of Mexican workers, but surely in the end, it's just going to go to American robots. The people who make the cars.
I think that's a bit of a jump. I think that's a bit of a jump. Having been in the company for 36 years and actually worked in the area where, when you look from a workforce perspective, yes, there's automation that's used, but when you need flexibility and you think about the customization that happens in our industry, the most flexible asset is a human being that can do different things. So I still think it's going to be a blend. I see it every day. And so I think that's oversimplifying what's really going to happen.
Thank you. Chairman Xu, can I come to you? You're chairman of China's electricity grid company. You grew up in the countryside outside of Beijing.
Yes.
Your parents had no electricity, but you were part of a generation that did have electricity, and you were telling me about your love of reading, no doubt, with electric light. I doubt you dreamt that you would be heading China's electricity grid company. Did you dream that as a child?
No.
No. And now you're there, you've got a tough job because the Chinese people, the Chinese government say that they have a crisis of polluted air, polluted food, polluted water. And yet you've got 1 billion people to provide energy for. And you're right at the heart of that.
Yeah.
Is technology going to help you do that?
Yes. Sure. I'm an electrical engineer, and I have been working for the power industry over 35 years already. In my childhood, it just started to electrification in the rural areas. But now, China's power industry is very strong. State Grid of China, Corporation of China, ranked number 2 in the Global Fortune 500, number 2 now. And with a turnover over $300 billion US dollars. And we are facing a lot of challenges. First of all, you know, China energy sector, the coal is dominated. So how to provide the electricity to the 1.3 billion people, and also with clean and safe and reliable energy. That's our challenge. For many years, we have put a lot of effort on that. The first one is the technology innovation. So in my company, we have invented the UHV technology. You know, UHV technology means we upgrade the voltage of the transmission. So in China, in my company, we have 1100 plus and minus 1100 kV transmission lines. Also, we have invented the 800 kV UHV-DC technology. With that technology, with the UHV-DC technology, we can transmit the power from the west part of the country to the east part. And in the west, we have a plentiful of the water resources and the coal resources. Especially, we have the renewable energy located in the west. So how to transmit the large part of the power to the load center in the east areas.
So last week, a couple of your cities were asphyxiating in the smog. It's a race, isn't it? You need to get electricity to the poorest parts of China.
Yes.
But your cities have to be livable.
Yeah.
And they're becoming unlivable.
Yeah.
So can you win that race?
Yeah. We have made achievements for the power for all. Every household in China now can be access of the electricity. Yeah. That's our put a lot of effort on that. So now in China, even you live in the very remote areas, you can no problem to use the electricity. Yeah.
And what about the other panelists have talked about the kind of reactions to globalization. President Xi Jinping mentioned it this morning. I remember being in China when China was acceding to the WTO, and there was a very lively debate about the pros and cons of globalization. But is there an anti-globalization movement in China? Is there a concern that people are worried that the reason why their air is dirty is because of globalization? Is that part of what you're thinking about?
Yeah. In the morning, President Xi Jinping gave a very important speech. After President's speech, I heard a lot of discussions from the audience, from the colleagues. They think, they all think President's speech first one gave a confidence to the world society. They gave the confidence for China economy, gave us a clean picture for sustainable development for China. We will maintain the relatively higher growth rate. This confidence will help the world economic development. I think this is a very, very important message for today's world economy. For the globalization in China, we think, in my personal view, I think the globalization is inevitable. It's good for the world economy development. In my company, we have assets in 6 countries. We have taken the share. We have taken the shares of the assets for the transmission and the distribution assets, and we are going to continue. We hope the globalization will move very normal, and then no obligation for the investment.
But you must be worried that while Chinese people are believing in globalization, a lot of people in the markets to whom you sell are urging their governments to close borders.
No.
So you will need the cooperation of those other countries to continue.
Yes, we need cooperation with internationally. So for my company, we are still looking for some opportunities to cooperate with our in the energy sector. So we are looking for that.
Very good. Thank you very much. Some questions are coming in from the audience. I have to say, lots of them. And I'm going to throw this to all the panel, and the bravest one will put his or her hand up first. But the questions are quite a lot about when will the usual prescriptions of education and entrepreneurship be recognized as not good enough? We've heard this every year at Davos. Mark, let me throw that one, or Vishal, Mark and Vishal. You know, you've both mentioned education and entrepreneurship.
I have a simple answer to that: never. Education and entrepreneurship are the correct answers. The reason that we keep hearing about these over and over again is we are just not doing enough of these. There is no other answer. Everything that we have learned to do is something that we have learned to do. There is no magic here. All these technologies that are reshaping the world around us, all these movements have to be trained. People have to be trained on these. People have to be taught these. There is no magic to it. Entrepreneurship. Why is entrepreneurship important? I think you have, all of us here are entrepreneurs. Mark's example that Mark talked about is an example of entrepreneurship and of giving. The solution seems straightforward. It is in the implementation of these that is where all the magic is. In my mind, John McCarthy, the father of artificial intelligence, once said that articulating a problem is half the solution. We are rapidly approaching a time where AI is going to be able to solve the problems that we can articulate mechanically. The human frontier is problem finding. And today we still live in a time where, innovation or entrepreneurship is something that is viewed as a mystical thing that is available to a chosen few people, that there are the entrepreneurs who come out of somewhere and then they invent things. But the reality is that the act of invention is something that can be taught. People can be trained to see something that is not there, and that if it was there, it would improve the world. And this is an act of entrepreneurship. So education and entrepreneurship are the answer. We just aren't doing enough of it.
Okay, so Mark, you're nodding, but across the United States and Europe, there's been a mutiny this last year, a revolution.
I'd like to go back to your last question first, which is
I'm asking about that.
Okay.
So is it that people are just not doing the education and entrepreneurship?
Well, I think you've got two different things going on. I think one is we're going to have to, exactly what Vishal said, number one is we're going to have to continue to explore new models of education. Certainly in the United States, our public school system needs all of our attention. I have encouraged every CEO to adopt a public school in the United States. I've done that. Our company has also adopted a public school district. Obviously, there's going to have to be new models of education, including vocational training, new ideas, things that have been pioneered here in Switzerland. But that may not be enough. We may also have to bifurcate to basic income as well. And that is something that you're hearing a little bit here at the conference. We've heard that in Guy Standing's session here, in his work. We see those basic income experiments happening even where I am in Oakland, funded by the CEO of Y Combinator, Sam Altman. We've seen them in other parts of Europe and Africa, in India as well. I think that is going to be potentially something that's going to have to be explored. We're entering some new territories.
Mm-hmm. Is it time for a new code for private sector leaders. You know, some would say that we've come through a kind of cowboy period, frontier period, where anything goes because the benefits will eventually trickle down. But do you think we're now on the threshold of a different code?
Well, I mean, that's why we're here at the World Economic Forum, where this forum is built on something that I believe is absolutely critical for the future, which is stakeholder theory, that CEOs can pivot to this idea that they're all about shareholders and that the business of business is business, or CEOs can pivot to stakeholder theory, which is what Professor Schwab pioneered in the early 70s and built this forum on, which is that a CEO has to take care of many stakeholders, not just the shareholders, but their, of course, customers, partners, employees, as well as their local community, their schools, the environment. These are all stakeholders. And as leaders, modern leaders here at this forum, we have to think about stakeholder theory as, I think, one of our key paths forward. Certainly, we're in the engaging in multi-stakeholder dialogues, especially when you see all kinds of different voices emerging in the world, some that we might like, some that we might not like, but only through multi-stakeholder dialogue will we be able to elevate our consciousness and get to these answers. We are going through a major shift in the world. Everybody here knows that. And so these are some of the answers. One of the reasons that I love coming to this conference, by the way, is because it's built on that foundation.
And I'd like to ask each of you, because you are all regulars, with the exception of Chairman Xu, who it's a delight to have with us this year. But so you come to the World Economic Forum and you do get this opportunity to debate values, challenges. Could you each give us an example of something that you've gone away and either thought differently about or changed in your own company as a result? Mukesh, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I'll just add a few years ago, right? We changed the, as our own company became big and came out of our own interactions, that for a company, it's very important to generate societal value, right? All of us live in society. Society gives you a license to operate in a business, and until you add value to that, you just cannot do it only for your shareholders or your employees, or you have to make a difference. And we started measuring that, and we now publish that, and we make sure that everybody understands that societal value is important, because that is important for sustainability, because on an ongoing basis, the corporation can survive. So that's one example that came out of interactions here, where we changed in the last 4 or 5 years.
Mary, what would your example be, or what would you want this year's leaders to take away and do differently?
Well, I think it really gets to truly focusing on the customer and solving real issues. And I think, you talk, when you really see an issue that you can solve, that's when people innovate, and it's not just entrepreneurs in one area of the country or the world, but it's everyone in their job of how do they make it better, how do they really focus on the customer. And I think also looking at all of the stakeholders. And so I think those are two things. At General Motors, we very much, we say we want to be the most valued automotive company, but it's not valuable to just our owners, but we feel as we work and have strong relationships and do the right thing across all of our stakeholders, that in the end will be the best solution for our shareholders. But the core of that starts with the customer and truly focusing on what is really going to add value to the customer, going to improve their life. And when you get a whole organization, 220,000 people looking at how do I improve every day, make it better, and focus on making decisions around the customer, it really energizes the entire company.
But I'd love to just add to what Mary said, because she's been an advocate for this, and I think that one of the key stakeholders in the world is women. If we look at where we are in gender equality, the World Economic Forum has said it's going to take another, something like 170 years to get to parity with men. We don't have time to wait. Every CEO needs to look at, are you paying men and women the same? That is something that every CEO can do today. We all have modern human resource management systems, but as a CEO, are you willing to step up and say, I pay men and women the same. I'm providing not only equal opportunity and equal advancement, but also equal pay. That's, I think, a major shift to empower women in society is, I think, critical part of the voice in getting that across.
Vishal, can I come to you? I mean, this is a particular year because, as I keep repeating, there has been a mutiny. What's the thing that you think leaders should take away this year?
I think that the two things that, so Mark earlier talked about the giving that his company does and has exemplified. We have to ask ourselves, do we all do something of that sort and do that? How much do we invest in training? In Australia, they recently put in a law to get 1% of the salaries or income for employee training. How many of us are doing that? I think that this idea of designing systems for few is something that we have to abandon, and we have to design systems, products, and services for everyone, especially for the have-nots. That requires a unique commitment to empathy. And design thinking is an example of this. Designing cars, Mary talked about this, designing cars and systems of that sort with the end user in mind, including the displaced people. I think that the asymmetry in technology, I mean, if you just look at the top 5 companies in the world by market cap now are technology companies. And I always wonder, why isn't every company a technology company? What is it about technology? We all learned technology. It did not drop from the skies. We learned technology and we learned to build it. Why can't we bring this idea of building technology for everyone, for all of us? So I think inclusive technology, creating access to these things, we should, as corporations, as CEOs, as leaders, stop waiting around for somebody else to come and tell us to do things or for somebody else to do them for us, and instead take the initiative and doing these things ourselves.
And can I pick up with that? Because you're talking about inclusive technology. Now, what we can see the digital revolution has done is polarized societies, created echo chambers, people only talking to people who agree with them, and their views become magnified and polarized. We all live in very diverse societies. This is very dangerous terrain where society, instead of pulling more together, is fragmenting and pulling apart. Is there a software solution to that?
Software for collaboration, one of the, so the answer to that is again yes and no. In the early days, when the memo was written to create the internet, JCR Licklider wrote this memo called Connecting the Intergalactic Communication Network. And the idea, because he thought that engineers will try to lowball things and then they will build a network for the planet, and which is what we ended up doing with the internet over the last 40, 50 years. So on the one hand, technology has connected us in an extraordinary way. If you just look at how deeply connected we all are as a society now. I mean, we had the opportunity to work with Mukesh Bhai on his new venture in Jio. And there are now something like, in the last 4 months, 80 million people in India who are subscribers of Jio. So technology has an incredible ability to connect us and unite us. And yet, a software for collaboration is something that is still in a very primitive state. If you look at the way we do our word processing or crunching, capturing information and so forth, it is still largely the same as it has been for the last 30 years or so. Technology to really help us collaborate, to help us achieve a shared perspective, a shared meaning, is still in early stages. We still have to come together to places like Davos and sit together to really understand what is going on. We don't yet have software that helps us get there more conveniently. So it is, on the one hand, yes, and on the other hand, it is still early.
And the counter-narrative to that is that software is also dividing us. Yes. Certainly you can see in social media, especially in regards to recent events that I don't have to go into in detail, that the software was used in many cases to divide society. Bots were created to take on anonymous positions in social media that look like humans amplifying narratives that may not have been true. And that is an example where the technology is dividing us. So this, again, this is a new frontier. This is also part of the fourth industrial revolution. When we look at what has social media done to us, yes, we like to be on Twitter, we get real-time feedback. I'm getting that right here. I'm looking at what people are saying and what they want me to respond to, just as you are on your iPad. And of course, that's part of the fourth industrial revolution. But the other side of it is there's also all kinds of intelligence and network capability that's out there trying to push society in a certain direction. That is new. That's certainly something that we really have not seen happen before.
So, but solutions from Mark or from anyone on the panel, you know, that this is dangerous stuff when the technologies become magnifiers of fear, of hatred of others, of polarization. Because we know that when people are afraid, they don't work together. And that means that they turn to governments, as it were, that don't permit them to work together, that control them and coerce them. So this is a pretty important moment so are there solutions? If technology is the driver of this, are there technology solutions for it?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a technology solution, but I think now more than ever, corporations, governments, communities, and Mark said this before, we have to work together and, you know, and demonstrate and look at some of the broader issues that society as a whole, the world is facing, and take action. I mean, in the auto industry, you know, one of the things we feel very responsible for is how do we improve the environment and the investments that we're making in the technology leadership. So I think if you know, governments, countries, communities, if we work together to solve some of these issues and solve some of the bigger problems, I think it demonstrates, you know, that we can work together. I don't know if there's a software solution for people stepping back and wanting to listen and wanting to understand another point of view and respecting another point of view, even if it's not theirs. But I think there's a role that we can play that we have to work together in a way we haven't to this point.
Chairman Xu, can I come to you? Because an underlying theme of this mutiny is that international cooperation itself could be at risk. And you've led on international cooperation in technology in the IEC. What is most at risk there? Why is it that we really need international cooperation on technology in your sector? I mean, it's nice to have, but is there any part of it that is absolutely essential?
Yes. I have been working for IEC for many years. IEC stands for International Electrotechnical Commission. The products of the IEC is standards. Standards can promote the international trade with technology standards. And IEC now has over 20,000 expertise engineers from all over the world. So with the IEC standardization, the manufacturers and the labs, and they can manufacture their products according to a unique standardization. This is much helpful.
Do you think it's going to become more difficult, though?
Not really difficult, because IEC was founded in 1906, 110 years already, and it's a very good working procedure. Everyone can participate for the standardization development. It's a very standard. We mean the standards are produced by consensus. People will agree. Every expert will has to be agree with the standards.
And how important to that process is the fact that you all know each other?
Yes.
I mean, how long would you say the engineers in this group have been getting together from different countries? How long have you known your fellow engineers?
Yeah, the IEC work, they divided many groups. We called it technical committee, TCs. In the TC, they are working in the specific area. For example, like electrical cars. The engineers come together. They meet several times in a year, and for one standard may take several years to finish a standard. It's very careful for the standardization, I should say. Yeah, no difficult. People are very enthusiastic to participate the standardization development. We can't say any difficult to do it. Yeah.
Right. It's a very important and interesting reflection, because a lot of us are watching the more visible aspects of international cooperation at risk or breaking down, and that basic insight of people knowing one another, coming together, trusting one another,
that's right.
and forging standards. Or, as Mark put it, coming to Davos each year, knowing one another, looking at each other in the face, coming to, raise the standard of what you expect of yourself, what you expect to do for the society around you. Could I ask you, before we close, I'd just like one sentence from each of you about what you think leaders across the private or the public sector or both, what is it that leaders should do differently this year as a result of the wake-up call of the last year? Vishal.
Two things come to my mind. One is resolve to bring access to new technologies to everyone. And second one is resolve to create 1 billion entrepreneurs.
Mark.
Well, I've told you one thing, which is I think that every CEO needs to adopt a public school. I really think that we're going to pivot to where each of us is going to have to take personal action to overcome the kind of levels of inequality that we're seeing. As we kind of head back to our hometowns, wherever they are, you don't have to go very far, even in San Francisco where I am, where I can find very high levels of inequality. I think that everybody has to really focus on this and take this seriously and do one thing. It could be adopt a school. It could be working more closely with an NGO. There's a commitment I think that each of us has to make to kind of move this ball forward.
Thank you. Mukesh.
Well, I think that last year it was about understanding the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution. This year it's about implementing them, keeping in mind that prosperity and benefit to all people, and people are always above technology. Embracing these technologies for the benefit of the people is our challenge.
And I agree with what all the panelists have said, and clearly the foundation of education and innovation, entrepreneurship. But I also think we have an obligation to go back and, one very tangible thing we can do is really talk about biases. Everyone has biases, and how do we? Once you realize you have them, then you can start to look and see people in a different light, and work with Sheryl Sandberg and lean in on understanding bias. It's training now we're doing at General Motors to improve our business, but I think it expands, because once you start to see that in yourself, I think it expands to not only where you work, but your communities, and how you can really start to embrace different points of view. So I think in addition to education, we really have to challenge ourselves, everyone, and there's things corporations can do from a training perspective to get people to have a more open view and to listen and to understand others.
Thank you. Chairman Xu.
Yeah. Last year, we State Grid has done two things mainly. One is renewable energy development. In our company, we have over 200 megawatt renewable energy. Part of 130 megawatt for the wind power, and over 700 megawatt for the solar power. That's our last year efforts. The second one is rural electrification. So we have people to have a more reliable power supply. But for this year, we will focus on the One Belt, One Road, One Belt, One Road initiatives. We will cooperate with neighbor countries and some other the other countries for the infrastructure connectivity. That's our this year effort focus.
Thank you very much. I think tonight's discussion and your comments and questions really highlight that in some countries of the world, particularly what some would call Western democracies, there has been a mutiny, but in others there has not been. And those are the countries that are, as it were, are still focused on delivering more and better, just as Chairman Xu and Mukesh and Vishal have pointed to. But I think in all of these countries, there is still a lesson from the last year, and I'd just like to come back to that as a rallying call for this year's Davos, which is that citizens are not just consumers. You can't just deliver to them. Whether it's in Chinese factories or on the streets of India fighting corruption, whatever it is, or whether it's the young, disaffected, unemployed men in Europe who are joining terrorist organizations. Why? A huge part is a human need to belong and a human need to be heard. And if humans are not belonging to their national community or the narrative that their government sets for them, they will find others, and those others will jeopardize a lot of what most of us care about. So I think it's for Davos this year to bring all of this innovation, these ideas about how you bring people with you, Mary's ideas about how to do that in GM, Mark and Vishal's ideas about the values that you can bring behind that, Mukesh and Chairman Xu's ideas about the way they're delivering better. We need to bring all of that innovative energy to really thinking about how we can support communities locally and nationally to create a system in which people feel they belong and feel that they're being heard. Now you could say, I would say that, I'm the Dean of a School of Government, but government is absolutely central to that, because it's governments that use words, that create narratives, which either help people feel they belong, help them feel they've got a voice, or don't. And I think that's the innovation I'd love to see come out of Davos. But could you join me in thanking and appreciating each of our panelists for terrific contributions this evening? Thank you all.